Hi, Steve Cooper, Rank Success, and this is another short video from my Reader's Corner, if you like. This is this little place where I come to read and to think and to get some inspiration. And I wanted to talk to you today about the book I'm going to cover, which is Turnaround by Bill Bratton, former chief of NYPD and Los Angeles Police Department, and it's written with Peter Nobler, and it's a fantastic book. And the context in which I'm going to talk to you about is I recently went to the Emergency Services show and up at the NEC, and I listened to a talk on performance by the Deputy Chief Constable Paul Anderson of Humberside Police. I did a podcast afterwards called The Spanish Inquisition, and nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, and it got me to thinking around performance, because I have lots of chats with promotion candidates, aspiring promotion candidates, and when we sit down and we start seriously talking about promotion, what will your approach be to promotion? What are your ideas and thoughts about it at the moment? It's a bit like a pot of treacle. You know, you've got to start stirring it really slowly, and then as we start having a conversation about it, it starts kind of freeing up, and we can have a conversation to keep going. But you know, that won't happen for you on a promotion board if you haven't done some meaningful preparation beforehand. So one of the resources, as I say, that you can read, that I highly recommend and I encourage every promotion candidate to read, is Turnaround by Bill Bratton. And the reason for that is because it's a fantastic approach to performance. It's historic, it's recent, it's part of his methods are interesting to read about. So you know, he turned around police forces, turns around organisations, and it's really intriguing to find out and to hear how he does that. And that book covers it. In fact, it covers, you know, the story of urban policing in America over 3 decades, you know, with the politics, the corruption, and the crime, and the policing history of it. But it's fantastic because Bill Bratton was one of the first people to bring in, you know, modern policing through data-driven information, and his program that he introduced was called CompStat, and I'm just writing a blog about it right now, and I might even embed this video in it. But it's around, you know, CompStat is short for computer statistics. And if you've ever watched the American cop series The Wire, you'll see some dramatized kind of NYPD, and Baltimore, I think, is where it's set. You'll see some dramatizations of performance meetings where local policing commanders are hauled over the coals. Pretty unpleasant stuff, toxic leadership style. And yes, it's, you know, it's a great TV series, and it's making a point and it's dramatized. But CompStat is a, you know, a renowned approach to holding police commanders accountable, and to try and make sure that there's a focus of resources where they need to be, and there's some science behind it. So really interesting book for you to read. I'd encourage you to read it. And the interesting thing with Bratton is, apart from being a, you know, phenomenal success wherever he was posted and delivering on that, he got people over a kind of number of hurdles. So you know, academics who looked at him and the way that he achieved what he achieved were really intrigued as to how he did it, and they thought they kind of wrote about, and you can find this on the internet if you want to. It's an article by the Harvard Business Review called Tipping Point Leadership, and in that they allude to how Bratton actually achieves that. And there are four hurdles that he gets people over, and that's the cognitive hurdle, by putting managers face to face with the problems and customers or community members, and finding new ways to communicate. The resourcing hurdle, that's a biggie. It's current, it's topical, it's relevant in policing, whichever kind of period you look at, but definitely, you know, today in British policing, the resourcing hurdle. So focusing on the hot spots with partners, the relationships with partners, and he talks about being privileged to work, and the privilege to have not had many resources, and the challenge of having to achieve with resources, existing resources, more for less. And I'm sure we're very familiar with that in British policing. And he kind of renounces about being, more comfortable with that, with even less resources, but he'll still aim to achieve more, and hopefully make the case by educating the public that if they were to give us more, it would be used and spent better, more effectively and more efficiently. The third hurdle is the motivational hurdle, so getting people over things. So your role as a leader, as a manager, as a supervisor is around leadership for people, performance and change, and we're talking about the performance aspect here. They're all linked, but the motivational hurdle, and he says he thinks he does that very well. He's a good motivator of people, and I think the record shows that. And he talks about a little prodding now and again, never really hurts. And in the sense of, if you've got trouble inspiring people, then you may need to kind of manage them a little bit more robustly. And that's what I was quite intrigued in listening to DCC Anderson's talk up at the NEC and the Emergency Services show. And the fourth hurdle that he talks about is the political hurdle, and he uses the term identifying and silencing internal opponents and isolating external ones. And I think what he means is, in order to push through change programs there, you don't assassinate people, you don't silence them in that way, but he's talking about excluding them, not giving them air, the oxygen of publicity, and bringing in a tight team. And that's exactly what he does in the book. And I really, as I say, I recommend it to you. If you're someone who's serious about achieving promotion, go and have a look how in a tough American policing environment he was able to completely transform, and as the book's called, turn things around. So I went up to the Emergency Services show. I listened to DC Anderson's talk around how in Humberside Police they turned around performance, they turned the ship around, and how he did that. And he talks about, performance management can be brutal and uncompromising, and I'm quite intrigued by the use of that language, because it sits with the kind of leadership portrayed in The Wire through the Baltimore police performance management meetings, i.e. A toxic kind of brutal management style in terms of how people are treated. And in that context, yes, it's dramatized, and at that time in NYPD you can clearly see that accountability needed to be driven. People needed to serious senior police commanders needed to step into the spotlight of accountability and have a system there to allow the force, if you like, the department, to bring them into that spotlight and hold them accountable for delivering services to the public. Well, it's not too far removed. In fact, it's very, very minuscule distance removed from what you will be expected to do at whatever level you choose to get promoted to. So sergeant, inspector, chief inspector, there will be an aspect around performance management, and you can predict questions around this. And it's often what I use with candidates. Tell me what your approach will be as a newly promoted leader to performance. So whatever level you're at, you can expect to face questions around that. So it's good to have examples, but also to have an idea about how you'll approach it. And that's why this book in particular gives you a good overview of how you might choose to think about it, to give you some inspiration, some ideas, some food for thought, and for you to reflect on it so that you can come up with some meaningful aspects and perspectives to your verbal responses, or if you are presenting written evidence, that you can do that effectively. I'm always interested in leadership impact and effectiveness, and that's why I've got these books. It's why I've got a genuine passion and interest in it, and I love reading around the context of leadership, and not just what was achieved but how it was achieved. And actually promotion boards are really interested in how you did that as well, not what you did so much, but how you did it. Do you understand how you did it? So that's really interesting. How did your own leadership actions contribute to improved performance outcomes? So do you have an idea around that? So this is just a kind of quick overview of that book. As I say, I'm interested in how people, this topic of turning things around. There's a couple of good other sources you can find, stepping outside the context of policing, so perhaps over to the Navy, the US Navy, United States Navy, where there are a couple of really good examples. So Captain Michael Abrasoff was appointed to lead the USS Benfield, a ship, and with the worst performing crew, the worst performing ship in the United States Navy, and through his leadership he turned it around completely to become the best performing ship in the US Navy. I'm really intrigued how someone can do that, and if you knock that on through departments, through teams, through areas, what's your role in that? And there's another example, which is David Marquet, who took over the USS submarine Santa Fe and turned that ship around, that vessel around as well, in terms of performance within 12 months. And he adopted a different leadership style. So I'm just looking at what my notes are here. He adopted a leader approach to command instead of a leader follower. So I'm quite intrigued by that, and I'm going to read a little bit more on it. So this whole concept of turning around performance is really interesting. It's great as a promotion candidate if you can start thinking about that well ahead of any promotion opportunity, and you'll find that in my digital toolkits. But I'm here in the Reader's Corner to recommend books for you to read. Have a look at that. It's a really good account about how he achieved it, the resistance to change, implementing CompStat, the leadership style required, and just how they can do things in America differently. So just for you to think through. I'm not suggesting for a minute that all of this could work in the British police service, but interestingly, the Policy Exchange report recently recommended that a CompStat style approach to performance is reintroduced. And for those of you who may or may not know a little bit of history around UK policing, policing by targets, that kind of aspect of history has all been done. You can read about it. In fact, I'm going to be doing a significant blog on it, and I think this video will probably appear in it. So until the next kind of book review, I wish you all the very best. If you are preparing for promotion, then make sure you do it well ahead of any process being announced, because it's the kind of thing that works, giving yourself that time for a run up. And I'll be back with some more book reviews shortly, and until then, take care and stay safe.